Welcome into the garage area. This is our Darlington recap show, and we've got a lot to talk about this weekend. We could start with the truck race, we could start with the Xfinity race, we could start with the great finish in the Cup race, but I think that we should start with the most important news of this past weekend, and that is that I made Reaction Theater on Door Bumper Clear. Hit it, Ryan.
Brad finally gets himself a win there in Darlington. That was awesome. It's got me a little bit emotional. My mascara is almost as running as bad as his was. Casey's boyfriend, Tyler, there, he's about as short on brains as he is on height. That move was never going to work. And finally, even Darlington is able to put on a good show with this absolute engineered scrap race car that we have. Can't wait till we finally move on to the next generation of race cars. So happy for Brad. Congratulations, TJ. You've been holding that team back for so long, but it's great to see you guys get a win.
Did you see TJ after the race?
But wait, there's more.
Hello? Is this that number that Miss Boat told us to call for a date with Joel? Yeah, I ain't got none of them there wiping rocks around my mailbox or pink flamingos in my yard or pineapples in my window or nothing like that. But I would like to take my pole out and get me some hogs if Joel's interested. Yeah, fish. I'm talking about fishing. I seen his profile on Twitter, and it looks like he's into fishing, so I'd be into that too. Just have him give me a call back. Thank you.
This guy likes Joel's pole.
And hogs.
Oh, man. Never did I think that I would be so famous as to not only have my own podcast, but to be on somebody else's as well. Two of the best calls I've got all year, in my opinion. It's great. I never thought I'd make that. That's awesome. Seriously, let's get back on track here, talking about the races this weekend. The truck race, Ross Chastain was able to get the win. Corey Heim dominated the race, led the most laps with 77, and ended up finishing 28th, got wrecked by Dean Thompson when he spun kind of in front of the field there. Looked like that was going to hand the win to Ty Majeski, but a late caution came out, and that's what allowed Ross Chastain to outduel him on the restart and get the win. Now, what did this do to the points for the top five, let's say, in the Truck Series standings?
The top five right now is Christian Eckes, Corey Heim, Nick Sanchez, Ty Majeski, Taylor Gray. I don't know what. I think maybe Corey Heim probably lost the points lead there because he's down 14 now. Yeah. I'm sure that impacted his day pretty good when it looked like he was on his way to a win. So that's kind of unfortunate for him. Overall, the race seemed to be a pretty decent race, especially for the Truck Series. Darlington just has a way of putting on good races. Yeah.
Although, we move on to the Xfinity race, and there's really not a whole lot to say about it. I didn't think it was a bad race by any means.
No.
I thought that there was a fair amount of action in it. The problem was it wasn't up front, because Justin Allgaier put her out front, led stage one, won stage two, led 119 laps, and ended up getting the win. What did that do for the points in the Xfinity Series?
Austin Hill's the leader, Cole Custer second, Chandler Smith third, Allgaier's fourth, tied with Jesse Love, both there, fourth, fifth there. So
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. Like I said, really wasn't a whole lot to say about those two races, but certainly wanted to give them the coverage that they deserve. All right, let's go on to the Cup race, where we got a lot to talk about. First thing, let's talk about the storylines coming into the weekend. Eric Jones is back after suffering that fracture in his spine. He is able to return to the race car this week at one of his better tracks. Where did he end up finishing, do you know?
Eric Jones. 19th.
Not a great day, but not terrible for the way that team has been running also. His teammate John Hunter Nemechek did end up spinning out in this race. Good to see him back. Glad that that's not keeping him out of the seat for any longer than it was.
Yeah, I was surprised he came back this soon. So.
I was too, and I don't think he would have had it not been Darlington either, just being that he has, I think, you have 2 wins there? Just one?
I think he has 2.
Yeah. So
this is only 2 wins, right? Or something.
He won at Daytona in the 20 car also.
Oh, okay.
That I do remember. But yes, good to see him back after an injury like that. The other big storyline, in my opinion, was the fact that Michael McDowell is leaving Front Row Motorsports to go to Spire. I did not feel great about that move. I understand the job security thing. Spire was willing to sign him to a long-term contract. McDowell has, I think, a 3-year contract with an option, and that
this is the option year.
This is
year.
the option year.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they accepted his option. This is his final year.
So this gives him a little more security going to Spire, from what I understand of the contract. I don't know what the pay is like, if it's better or what. And yeah, you could say McDowell has a history of building teams up, and I think that's a good thing. Yeah. But what would concern me is front row is starting to excel. Like they're running well every week. Their biggest detriment is their pit road pit stop times. Todd Gilliland, I think, would have a top 10 run every week if it wasn't for those. And McDowell, I mean, he won a Daytona 500. He won the Indy Road Course last year. He's run well pretty often so far this year, despite Ford's struggles. And they're receiving more support from Ford. So it really did surprise me that was the route that they ended up going, or that he ended up going, wanting to move on from that team and going to Spire. I'm sure that there's some personal decisions there involved as well, but it kind of caught me by surprise. And I'm not sure that's going to be a great move for his career if he wants to continue to compete for wins. What do you think?
I mean, I've seen what, Carson Hocevar, rookie, like 20th in points right now, which I think is a better spot than McDowell is even right now. So, I mean, I'll tell you the truth, I really think Spire might have better equipment. They're putting more money into their teams and stuff, because they talked about it on, I think it was DBC, that or it was Denny Hamlin, they were talking about Michael McDowell. They don't have some of the technology and stuff the big teams have that actually Spire actually does have.
Gotcha.
So Michael McDowell talked about all the homework and things he had to work with front row that he may not need at Spire. So I think Spire may have better cars than what we think, just because considering who's driving them. I mean, Carson Hocevar, rookie, Corey LaJoie, who people put a lot of praise in, who had good finishes. I really don't see that out of him the way I think a lot of other people do. That I don't think he's quite up to it, because I see, maybe not this week, and Carson Hocevar struggled, but that's probably expected for a rookie at Darlington in the Cup Series. So, but for the most part, Hocevar has been the leader of that team.
Yeah.
So, seeing what Hocevar does with that car, I think bodes well for what I think McDowell could do in there.
And it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Zane Smith in this whole process too, because he's in the 71 right now. Yeah. And that's what McDowell's going into. I know that Zane Smith is affiliated with Trackhouse, so it almost seems like they're either getting another charter or somebody's out.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how that's all going to shake up.
Yeah. Supposedly, Stuart Haas might be selling at least 2 of their charters.
Oh, that's old news by now.
So,
They might be selling all 4.
Well, that's the last thing I heard, which surprised me. So,
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that's all going to work. It sounds like Ryan Preece could be out over there too.
Yeah, evidently he's rumored for the 21. Because I heard Harrison Burton's out.
Harrison's got to be out.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
And Cole Custer is rumored for the 34 now.
I guess I could see that.
So.
That wouldn't be a bad move for Cole.
No.
But regardless, it seems like the garage area is a little bit split on this particular decision as to whether or not this is a good move by McDowell. But it sounds like it could be positive moves all across the board for all of these teams. If Zane goes to Trackhouse, like actually under their umbrella.
Well, there's rumors of Colleague and Trackhouse merging.
Yeah, I could see that being a possibility. There's all kinds of rumors.
So
we could get in the weeds big time with this if we go down this road for sure. Bottom line, I think that it's a bad move for McDowell. You think it's a good move for McDowell?
I don't think it's going to be any worse than what it is. I mean, it's either lateral or better. That's my opinion on it.
Time will tell for sure. We ended up seeing some different strategy throughout this race. Tires mattered a lot, and I was happy about that.
Yeah.
I was glad to see tires play a factor. Every week I wish that was the case. As we well know, we've documented many times that we wish that tires were a bigger factor week in and week out. It being that they're not going to put bigger motors in this car, horsepower not going to be an advantage that we end up having. But I still think that the aerodynamics played a factor this week, but it wasn't nearly as big a factor as it normally is at a lot of racetracks. So I was happy about that, and you were able to see. Ty Gibbs talked a lot about it being difficult to pass, but I felt like if you got on that tire exchange, it wasn't bad as far as passing went. And Darlington in general is supposed to be difficult to get by each other. So I didn't feel like it's, say, at a Texas where you can't pass due to air or something like that. It wasn't the same type of too hard to pass that I didn't like to see. I like to see what we, for the most part, saw this past weekend at Darlington. And as I said, guys on different strategies, some trying to pit more often throughout the stage so that they stayed ahead on that tire advantage, and other guys trying to stretch the life of the tire out in order to make fewer pit stops.
Yeah.
And it seemed like the leaders mostly were able to play that stay out longer strategy. But there were some guys that ended up getting themselves up there, namely Chris Buescher and Ty Gibbs in that third stage by stopping more often. They had to catch a lucky caution with Kyle Larson wrecking.
Yeah.
But it did end up working out, mostly, not so much for Buescher, for them at the end of the race. Larson, who absolutely, in my opinion, won Throwback Weekend with his paint scheme.
Oh, yeah.
That was the best one, hands down, in my opinion. A little bit disappointed that more teams aren't putting more effort into that.
Yeah.
I know that people have talked about this could be the last throwback year that there is, throwback race at Darlington.
I don't know if there's anything official about throwback anymore. I think a lot of the teams themselves are just calling it a throwback.
Yeah, no, they are. I'm pretty sure. It's disappointing because I actually thought that was great.
Yeah.
When they did that, and I just wish that more teams put more effort into it. Unfortunately, I have to give Hendrick an award of doing a great job with that.
Yeah.
But Larson ended up winning stage 1 after he was able to take the lead from Ty Gibbs. And then he was able to also lose the lead on pit road on the ensuing pit stops. As we said, John Hunter Nemechek, he ended up spinning kind of all by himself. That was kind of odd, I guess, the way that worked out. Where did he end up finishing? Do you know? John Hunter Nemechek.
31st.
Yeah. Was he was still running.
Yeah.
Then on the following restart, after Nemechek spun out, one of those cult followers at Hendrick Motorsports, William Byron, decided to make it 3 wide and ended up diving it to the apron, washing up the racetrack, moving up into Truex, moving Truex up into Blaney. Blaney pounded the wall pretty hard, climbed the fence a little bit even, and ended up breaking quite a bit of stuff. I don't imagine it was just a toe link on that race car, and made him the very last place finisher, retired him for the day. He was pretty unhappy with his, what I learned tonight, ex-brother-in-law, William Byron, and sounded like maybe even Truex too. It sounded like he was ready to inflict physical harm on the both of them, and was not impressed with the actions that took place there. Byron didn't seem to show a whole lot of remorse on the radio, kind of like, well, I was there. What was I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Well, I got an idea. How about you don't go as hard as you can into the corner and put everybody in a bad spot? You're on the bottom.
Yeah.
You've got the most control in that situation. So you go ahead and tell me how you're going to defend your Hendrick Motorsport teammate there. All right, that's all I needed. Not a lot of defense for Billy B on that one. Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking there as how that was all going to work out. Truex was my pick, which makes me even more bitter about it. And he ended up finishing 25th, I believe.
Yeah.
And I still won the picks with that because Larson wrecked later, which was Ryan's pick. Zane Smith, also a car that spun all by himself. You know, another guy that I saw in the wall a lot was Kyle Busch. Where did he end up? He's having a terrible year. Kyle Busch is not that high up. You're going way too high. You're looking for him.
27th.
Oh, yeah. That's a good spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a good day for Kyle Busch either. I kind of thought when he got to Darlington, that's more of a driver's racetrack, that he might be able to shine through there a little bit, and did not happen at all.
I mean, he had a couple top 10s previously, so I thought maybe he was on the
upswing.
Upswing.
So Reddick ended up winning the second stage, which that stage had a lot of cautions, but besides that, didn't really have a lot of action. I don't know if you felt that way too or not. Like a couple single car spins, and then Byron just driving like a moron. And other than that, he might earn the Hack Award instead of Bowman this week. And Reddick ends up winning the second stage. He ended up leading the most laps on the day at 174. And Brad did end up taking the lead from Reddick in stage 3 in traffic on a long run. And Larson, who was a factor but was starting to fade from being a factor. He was running top 5 somewhere in there, and he kind of started to fade from that. Ended up hitting the wall pretty hard off of turn 2, I think it was. And that's really what started the downfall for him. I mean, he hit the wall pretty hard as green flag pit stops were starting. He hadn't made his yet, and then he did finally end up wrecking altogether. And that's what Larson and Gibbs had already started their pit cycles and were up front, running up front with that tire advantage. And when Larson finally wrecked with about 40 laps to go, that's what was able to let them reset and stay up front with the rest of the leaders as everybody came down pit road to get tires. That last, not the last restart, but no, I guess that was the last restart. Brad raced Tyler Reddick really hard.
Yeah.
Just kept, he knew he had to. Like, Reddick started where he wanted to start, and Brad got alongside him as best he could, and he just could not, Reddick just could not clear him completely. And Brad would drive it down into every corner just as hard as he could. Tried to stay on his door. Pinched him up against the fence a couple times, and that's what finally allowed them to make contact and kind of come back off the wall down on the racetrack. And I thought Buescher was going to run flat in the back of Brad. He finally got that car yanked all the way to the left and went on going by to take the lead. And it looked like it was going to be Buescher's day from there.
Yeah.
Brad seemed like, to me, kind of backed off Reddick, let everything cool down because they had just raced so hard for probably 6 or 7 laps.
Yeah.
Just real hard side by side. And Reddick actually started to run Buescher down. You could see Buescher getting a little loose and out of shape and getting up and touching the wall. He couldn't run the fence in one end of the racetrack or the other. I think it was 1 and 2.
Yeah, he'd run in low in 1 and 2 instead of staying up along the fence, and Reddick would get a run.
Yep, Reddick would close up on him. And Tyler, for whatever reason, I felt like there was plenty of time left. There was 13 laps or something like that to go.
It was about around the 10 lap mark.
Okay, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Brad was starting to charge again. Like, that margin was starting to shrink when Brad decided that it was time to go. He was starting to run Reddick down. Reddick was closing up to Buescher, and I thought that Brad had enough time, but he had to get going to make a run for the lead here if he could get by these 2 cars. And it just seemed like Reddick put on full-blown panic mode and drove it William Byron style as hard as he could down in the bottom of the corner. No chance to make it whatsoever. Buescher, I think, got tight behind him as he was sliding up the racetrack. He bounced off the wall. Reddick bounced into Buescher. They both hit the wall, and it just destroyed both their race cars. No caution came out for it, but they hit the fence so hard that they obviously broke components on the cars. And Brad still couldn't pass them. He charged up behind him, but he wasn't able to get by the 2 of them. You saw Buescher's hand out the window like, dude, what are you doing? And they both ended up having to pit. That basically handed the lead to Keselowski, who had to hold off a pretty hard-charging Ty Gibbs there at the end. Once he got to about 3/4 of a second back, he kind of stopped closing at that point. But he looked like he was going to be a problem there for a minute, and Brad ends up getting the win. First time in 3 years that Keselowski's won a race. I was pulling for him. I was happy to see him win, see him carry that American flag on the front stretch. It was pretty cool. I like seeing Brad back in victory lane, and I thought that was something that I wouldn't say for very many years. And then afterwards, we saw Buescher get out of his car, go blowing by Ty Gibbs, and he walked over to Tyler Reddick, and I was pretty sure that he was going to pound him into the ground like a whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
And Reddick was like, dude, I'm sorry. I messed it up. I'm sorry. And Buescher told him that didn't work for him. And he needed to have one of those stickers on his doorpost just like Reddick had, and he was not impressed with that. And Buescher's got to be getting frustrated. He's running very well, but second last week in the closest finish in NASCAR history, and now ends up finishing, well, where did he finish?
30th. 30th, yeah, 30th right there. I knew it was 30-something, but 30.
And where did Reddick end up?
32nd.
32nd. So, he should have possibly won the race for sure. Finished in the top 3.
Yeah.
And ended up getting wrecked due to an incompetent move there. And as I said on Door Bumper Clear, Reddick is about as short on brains as he is on height, which I think is a great line to describe how he drove that particular race. That seemed like an absolute desperation move that he did not need to make to me. I don't know. What do you think that there's going to be some holdover? Did you hear the interview? Well, not the interview, but did you hear the microphones as those two were going back and forth next to the car? Did it sound to you like Buescher said this means war?
I thought it said this means more.
Okay.
And talking about that sticker on.
They interpreted it that way on the teardown too, saying that he said this means more. I thought in the moment he said this means war, and I was like, oh boy, how's that going to go?
I saw someone else online post that said this means war, and I don't think that's what he said. I said this means more.
Yeah, it could very well have been. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Great race in my opinion, especially for the next gen car. I actually think, well, I said last week was the best race in the next gen car, and it probably was on a mile and a half. But Darlington's such a unique racetrack. I think that I would rather have this every week than what we had at Kansas.
Yeah.
Just because the aerodynamics were so much more minimized this week than they were last week.
There's still work needs to be done. I mean, but
you know what? But our opinion as fans does not matter.
Yeah.
Because NASCAR doesn't care about that. We're going back to Phoenix for a championship race in 2025.
Yeah.
We aren't bringing the Clash back to Daytona. We are not putting more horsepower in the race cars. Goodyear might be doing a little something to help us out, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And the diffuser is going to stay on the car, and the aerodynamics are going to still be a factor.
Yeah.
We're adding road courses to the schedule instead of the tracks that we'd want to see. So NASCAR does not care about you and I or our opinions or us wanting to continue to watch the sport. I don't really know what they do care about, but it's definitely not the fans. So I don't know what else to say there. It's disappointing. It's frustrating. I did see, speaking of Goodyear, I saw something very interesting on Instagram this week. This was the Goodyear 400 at Darlington this week. And they ran an ad on Instagram for Goodyear where they asked drivers, what era would you like to race in most? You know what they all said? Just take a wild guess what they all said.
90s.
90s and 2000s. Yep. That's what they all said, because you know why? Because you could just, those cars were out of control to drive.
Yeah.
They were hard. And they slipped and slid around. And that's exactly what the drivers want. That's what the fans want. That's where NASCAR was at its height. But by all means, let's move away from that. And that's where we are today. And as I said, once again, on Reaction Theater, I cannot wait for the next generation of race car. And I actually hope I'm the one that gets to design it, because I would put some smart people around that and let it rip. Lots of horsepower, lots of tire wear, no downforce. In fact, coil binding is illegal now. You have to have the car at least 6 inches off the ground all the way around the racetrack. That would be awesome. So, I don't know. What are we looking forward to at the All-Star race? Anything? I think North Wilkesboro is going to be an interesting racetrack this year. Hopefully we'll see what those tire compounds look like with having the option between the two of them. And we'll see.
So with the repave and all that too, because
a
lot of times repaves can kind of hurt the racing product. So
I think they've learned a lot since they started doing repaves more recently.
Yeah.
And it will be, you're right, it will be interesting to see what that racetrack looks like. I'm looking forward to it. This is also the month of Kyle Larson, and interesting to see how he does out there in Indianapolis as well.
He just barrel rolled a sprint car.
Oh, did
today,
he?
So.
Nice. I'm sure he's completely unfazed by that, because it is Kyle Larson. Once again, congratulations to Brad Keselowski. TJ's been holding that team back for a long time. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here tonight?
That's all I got.
That's all I got. Looking forward to the upcoming weeks here. Looking forward to Denny Hamlin's Bracket Challenge. Glad that thing's back. We'll be doing that on the show for sure also. Thank you guys for watching, listening, and we will see you next week after North Wilkesboro.